I'm a huge fan of the Partycades from Arcade1up. On this channel, I've reviewed multiple different units, and it's really unfortunate that with the way things have gone with Arcade1up, I highly doubt we're going to see much on the front of any new or exciting Partycades. Basically, it doesn't seem like it's something Arcade1up is going to be heavily supporting. But I still see in the communities from a lot of the different fans out there that people like these units. They tend to also buy them due to the fact that you can get them relatively cheap if you find a clearance item of them, or in some cases I see them on my local marketplace for relatively cheap. So I still believe there's a lot of people who do seek these out. And when it comes to the Pacman units, though, there's a lot of different tiers, a lot of different models that were released, and some of them are of really, really good quality, like the Super Pacman or Miss Pacman Partycades that came out later in the Partycade life cycle, if you want to call it that. And then there's some that I've also had, like the 8-in-1 Anniversary Edition Pacman Partycade, that fall short in a lot of ways. And I actually started this review right when I started this channel, and instead of just reusing the old audio and trying to make it look like a fresh video, I decided to revisit the unit itself and kind of give you a fresh take on it, especially if you're in the market to buy a used Pacman Partycade, and also to go over why I believe you should probably just steer clear of this Partycade or this generation of Partycades in general. So let's take a look. So to start, originally when I picked up this unit, I was actually pretty intrigued by the artwork on it. I liked the black and yellow accents, and I thought as far as Partycades went, this one looked pretty cool. It matched the retro aesthetic of Pacman, but it also had a nice color coordination to it. So I thought for a Partycade, this looked better than a lot of the other Partycades that came out in that era related to Pacman. Now, just to highlight, I believe there were two variations at this time period of the 8-in-1s. So there's one that I believe has like a yellow siding or a yellow and red accents versus black and yellow. So that's something to consider, because as I understand, they're both the exact same unit. They have the exact same game selections and also have the exact same flaws. Now, we're going to get into that in a moment. Now, moving further, one of the things about this unit that I do like is the screen itself looked pretty crisp. I'm not certain that it's a BOE, but it looks good. It's a good looking screen. It doesn't look washed out. It looks just crisp, kind of like my other Partycades and some of the better BOE-based Arcade1up units. Now, with that being said, this is where we get into some issues. And what I mean is, it's how the device outputs the visuals itself that seem to be the problem. So on later Partycades, later Arcade1up units, you had the option to change scan lines or to just have it running as almost like just pixels in HD. I myself am someone who likes the crispness of the HD pixels. This, though, doesn't really have the scan lines. It just looks blurry. And that was something that I noticed out of the gate, to the point that when I first purchased this, I thought there might have been something wrong with the unit. And looking online at that period, turned out I was not alone. This was just a common flaw of these units at that time period. Now, moving a bit further into the games themselves. So you have a pretty good game selection, right? So you have your standard Pacman, you have Pac-Land if that's your sort of thing. But one game in particular that I originally was excited to play on this, and especially at this period in time when I had a far smaller home arcade, was Xevious. And Xevious was a game that I had actually put a lot of time into way back when, so I was excited to play it again and play it on this unit and have it on display to play in my home arcade. Now, the fundamental problem, however, with Xevious is that you have a 4-way gated joystick on this device, and that's an 8-way gated game. So it becomes very difficult to play this game or play it well as you start to progress further into it. And that to me was one of the biggest flaws of this device. It seemed like they just threw Xevious in just because, without the foresight that Xevious wouldn't really play or perform well on this style of device. And that was something that for me was a bit of a sting, because I was actually excited to play that on this device, but it turns out it didn't really matter because the game didn't work well. Now, with that being said, Pac-Man, for example, appeared to work well. Pac-Land seemed to work well. The other games on the device seemed to play and control well, and again, it's a Pac-Man based unit, so I'm not going to go deep into the buttons and explain that these needed Sanwa or something, but the buttons feel acceptable on this device. And the joystick for the 4-way gated games also feels pretty good. It feels tight. Now, this leads to another issue, and this seems to have been an issue that was consistent with this era of Partycades, and appears to be something I saw online with the Pac-Man ones in specific. This unit also seems to have an issue when it comes to saving high scores. Now, I've not had this issue since on any of my subsequent Partycades, whether it's my Pac-Man, NBA Jam, or my Street Fighter 2 Partycade. It seemed like it was just this era of Partycades that for some reason it would randomly reset high scores. I'm not sure why. I don't know if I did something that caused that, but you would get a certain high score and sometimes it would save for a couple days and then you'd boot this back up and it just wouldn't save other days. So I'm not sure what the issue was or what the flaw was, but it appeared to be something that was attributed to this era of Pac-Man Partycades. Now, further to that, one of the other things, and this was a quirk that I disliked from a lot of the Arcade1up units generally, and this is the 3-level volume control system. Now, again, later Partycades have the gradual increase, decrease volume, which I prefer. However, on this device, you just have the 3 levels, and it's the medium and high levels appear to almost just be way too high, and they sound way too loud, and there's never really that happy middle ground I found with that volume control system. And so that's another sort of thing that's kind of flawed with this device. Now, as it stands, I'm going to throw this asterisk out there like I do in a lot of these devices. If you can find this thing for like $50, probably worth grabbing. However, if you can find a Miss Pac-Man or Super Pac-Man Partycade with the light up marquee, which indicates that it's one of the better quality units, for the same price or even for $100, I would heavily recommend putting your money into those devices versus this one. I do see on some of the groups I'm on, and especially on Marketplace, these 8-in-1s making their appearance. And my opinion is that of this generation, they're worth skipping. And if you're not going to skip them, it's purely worth just spending as little as possible on them. I understand they're Pac-Man units, but they have a lot of, in my opinion, pretty big flaws that I really dislike, that make it not as great as it could have been. And so in my opinion, I heavily recommend skipping out on this one. And if you can find them used or on clearance, look for one of the light up marquee model Miss Pac-Man Partycades or Super Pac-Man Partycades, as I believe you'll get a lot better bang for your buck out of those devices, even if they cost a bit more. And I just say that because they also have fixed a lot of these flaws, like the variable volume, the screen settings that you can change, the higher quality just marquee in general to me is a nice bonus. This one doesn't have that at all. And I'm not one of these marquee snobs. I know some of the guys who look at these Arcade1ups or any of these retro recreation devices, it's like light up marquee or nothing. I'm not a snob about it, but it's a cool little extra if it has it. So ultimately, if you can find this for dirt cheap, maybe it's worth grabbing. If not, I'd heavily recommend holding out to get a better generation Arcade1up Partycade.